Welcome back to Invest Africa, and tonight we're talking about Zambia. Now, the country's 2030 national vision articulates its aspiration to become a prosperous middle-income country by the year 2030 and to transform itself into a competitive economy which is outward-oriented and where hunger and poverty are significantly reduced.
Zambia may be considered a small market in itself, but the geographical location is such that it shares its borders with 8 other countries and has given it the advantage of serving as a transit and access point to over 170 million people. With the country's rapidly growing economy, Zambia experienced a power deficit, which, apart from being an obstacle to fast-tracking economic growth, the challenge presented investment opportunities in sectors other than mining. Other investment opportunities include electricity transmission in the Zambia-Malawi interconnector and the upgrading of large and small hydro projects. But the current structure of tax incentives and low tariffs in the energy space has made it difficult to attract independent power producers.
That's why we're reviewing the laws. You see, in government, you cannot do something without the law. You have to do what is according to the law, what is legal. And therefore, we are reviewing these policies, we are reviewing the legislation in order to make it more balanced. There is legislation which is the Citizens Economic Empowerment, okay, which is not in harmony with the Companies Act, which is not in harmony with the ZDA Act. So we are going to harmonize those so that they can all be talking to one another. And this obviously happened over a period of time. And when you make changes to the laws, they take time. They've got to go through drafting, they've got to make sure that the harmony is achieved, and so on and so forth. And that's what we're working on at the moment.
The real estate sector has also experienced a growth spurt due to the rising middle class. However, the need for low-cost housing and the financing for such projects has not seen the same growth.
Typically, I think for the private sector, because they want to get their money back, right, they would fund economic infrastructure. Because in the end, you can get the customers and the clients at the end of that, So you build in the water systems, but the mines will benefit. So you're looking for the economic infrastructure programs to build the economy. So social infrastructure is very important, but typically government would do that, because like schools, hospitals, not really for private sector.
The Zambia environment is seeing expansion, but the real challenge will be ensuring that the GDP numbers translate into real job creation for people on the ground. Tumisho Mahanyele, Johannesburg.
Thank you to me. Now, still with me in studio is Jason Kazilimani, Senior Partner, KPMG Zambia, Andrew Chipwende, Director General, Zambia Development Agency, Rodrigo Jarai, Group Executive, International Business Connection, and from our bureau in Lusaka, Cuthbert Malindi, Founder and Chairman of PostNet. Before we discuss some of the issues that came out of this, I just wanted to refer back to the figures that we gave at the beginning of the program, where I said in 2011, $5.4 billion in foreign direct investment came into Zambia. That was the approved amount. The amount that was actually invested came in at $1.8 billion. And that $5.4 billion is going to spread over the next 3 to 5 years. So, Andrew, let me come to you, because I did say at the beginning that I wanted you to tell me whether you're satisfied with the amount of flows and the amount of money that you have seen coming into Zambia since all these other issues that you're doing have been addressed. And we did hear the minister speak about some of the action that's being taken to try and address some of the bottlenecks.
Yeah. Well, satisfied, probably as an investment and trade promotion agency, you can never be satisfied with the level of investment that you get. The moment you do that, you become complacent.
Oh, but there's a capacity issue as well, because you can't get all this money coming in and then you're unable to process it and get it into the right areas.
Will do. You have to look at, I think, to put some context as to where we stand as a country.
Sure.
If you go back to 1994, our FDI inflows at that time stood at about $34 million. US dollars. If you look at the period 1994 to 2004, a 10-year period, and compare with the period 2004 to where we are now, 2004 is fundamental in that that's a year the government began to implement a private sector development reform program which aims to address some of the bottlenecks that investors face in doing business. FDI inflows for the post-2004 period is 6 times higher than the decade preceding. Obviously, that is impressive performance. If you look at the World Investment Report for 2012, Zambia's published by UNCTAD, Zambia's FDI inflows for 2011 and 2012 in the Southern African region was only third to, obviously, South Africa,
right,
as well as Angola. But Angola, it's obvious because of the oil.
Because of the oil,
so
yeah.
they can't really compete. So At the regional level, we've been performing well. But I think what is fundamental for us is to try and now focus more on the sectors that are going to create accelerated growth, as well as address the issues of job creation.
We're going to talk about that, but do you have a target that you're working with?
For this year, in terms of planned investment, for the year 2012, our target, because of elections, there tends to be a slowdown. We had set a target of about 4 billion in terms of approved projects, but as of June 30th, I think we had approved at about 4.2 billion dollars.
You're overachieving, Andrew.
Probably we underestimated and underestimated the potential.
Which is a nice problem to have.
A good problem to have. But I think where the challenge is on the rate of implementation, as you mentioned earlier on. I think capacity issues, and this is where the private sector development reform program is essential for us, because it aims to address issues of fast tracking, because there's no point of having a high value of approved projects, and then when you come to implementation, what we've been achieving of late is about 29 to 30% implementation rate. Our target is to try and speed up that and probably move closer to the 50% mark in terms of implementation rate.
Let's move on to the hot investment destinations. I know that Rodwell, you would have very specific ideas about where those which sectors are hot. But let's begin with Jason, because you look overall at the Zambian economy. Tell me, what's hot in Zambia and why?
Mining will always be hot.
Mining will always be hot because of the copper. But is it just copper?
Well, there's copper, there's cobalt. Copper and cobalt always go together. There's also the precious stones sector, emeralds. It's not a well-known fact, but Zambia actually has the second highest deposit of high-grade emeralds in the world. About 20% of the high-grade emeralds.
That's a nice stat to have. We journalists, we love stats, because if I'm writing about Zambia, I'd like to say the number 2 cobalt or emeralds producer in the world, or high quality, as we like to mention sometimes.
Yes. Then the other precious stones, things like uranium, iron ore deposits, diamonds.
Iron ore, did you say?
Yes. It's there, just that it's not yet developed.
Okay.
And then there's also the black gold, oil. There have been traces of oil that have been found in Zambia, Eastern Province, Western Province, and so on.
But that chase has been going on for a while, because I do remember in Zimbabwe there was also a mention of oil, and it turned out it was actually a big hoax. I'm hoping it's not the same in Zambia. But outside of mining, where else?
Outside of mining, there's agriculture. I think agriculture is always there on the back burner. When you look at, say, the return that you get from horticultural products and floriculture, they're very, very high. That business is actually thriving, and I think I'd really like to see that develop much, much more. And then the other cash crops, cotton, tobacco, things like jatropha, which can be used as a substitute for sugar. All those are major opportunities. At the moment, Zambia's land is about, I think about 58% of Zambia's land is actually arable land. But out of that, only 14% of the arable land is actually under cultivation. So there's a big capacity to be utilized there.
Okay, let's go to Zambia. It looks like you take up most of our time talking about the areas of investment. Let's go to Lusaka, on the ground, to the private equity guy, and ask what he sees in terms of what's hot in Zambia.
In terms of the hot spots, I tend to look at these things obviously from a micro standpoint, because it's all very well talking about the macro, the GDP growth, and your big hitters like mining, agriculture, and construction. But I think for a private equity guy, you really need to look underneath that. And I think one of the growing sectors is the financial services technology sector, because of the convergence between technology and financial services. So there are a lot of opportunities in that space. Secondly, when you look at agriculture, Jason mentioned agriculture and mining, I think. The money for infrastructure is there. But I think what's lacking is the logistics or the support side of that infrastructure. So from our perspective, in trying to bring in private equity investors in Zambia, we're really looking at a space of between $500,000 probably to $10 million investment. So we're not looking at the billions that the mines are talking about. So in terms of really what's driving growth in that sector, we're looking at consumer products. I mean, the fast food what you call quick service restaurant business in Zambia. It's growing, obviously, because of the influence of South Africa. But I think the challenge always is how big the market is. If you look at East Africa, you're talking about a market of 120 million when you combine Kenya and the others. Of course, we can't talk about Nigeria, 170 million. When you talk about Zambia, we have a population of 14 million. You combine that with Malawi and Zimbabwe, it doesn't even get close to the East African market. So I think that's one of the issues that investors look at.
You're taking us back to the Federation, but that's a discussion for another day. Let me come to Rodwell here, because I think he mentioned something that you would definitely be interested in, convergence. Is that something that you have also picked up?
Absolutely. So what we are seeing, it's IT and communication coming together. So before, the line was right in between. You could actually see the differentiation. But today, if you look at the continent, you've got billions of mobile phones. The services which you can take to that mobile phones, I strongly believe that will make a difference to the continent. So imagine someone who's suffering from HIV/AIDS, who maybe forgets to take their medication, to just push an application to that mobile phone to say, now it's time to take your medication, and so on. I think it can enable the continent. We've run out of time, so I'd like each of you very, very briefly to talk about the main points, assuming Minister Sichinga is listening, because he's the one who's been complaining about the lack of attention that's being given to Zambia. Let me begin with you. So from my side, I think as businesses, you need an enabling environment to enable you to be able to do business. IT infrastructure is key, and if government implements IT infrastructure, they can strongly have a competitive edge as they move forward to be able to provide services, solutions, and so on to their citizens. I'll take it you're being a neutral, never mind it's the sector you are in. Let's come to you, Jason.
Well, I think for me, infrastructure, obviously, especially power infrastructure. We really need more power. The number of downtime for electricity is growing more and more. But a positive is in the financial services. I think as Mr. Malindi put it, this is something that we've seen in action. The minimum capital requirements for banks have been raised, and hopefully that will lead to more our banks, the local banks, being able to finance bigger ticket transactions and actually fund all these infrastructure projects.
Cuthbert, you have 20 seconds for your point.
My point really is, I think the banks will hate me for this, but I don't think they've done SMEs any favors in Zambia. I think what we need is more private equity, more venture capital, and that has to be driven by government to a certain extent, because until you get the local entrepreneurs to participate in the economy and the investment arena, really you're not going to get that stability and that continuity in terms of business on the ground.
He speaks like the private equity guy that he is. Captain, we have got to catch you there. Final message, sir. Opportunity to sell Zambia, but you have 20 seconds.
For Zambia really should be viewed in terms of the opportunity it offers for upscaling any investor into the region. You can look at Zambia, don't look at Zambia as a standalone, but look at the opportunity it provides for upscaling your investment into the region, be it in the agriculture, infrastructure. If you're going to invest in energy, you won't be looking at Zambia, you'll be looking at export opportunities, including the markets like South Africa. And if you're going to go into the IT space as well, similarly, you can use Zambia to upscale into the region as well.
Absolutely. I was trying very hard not to talk about the Federation, but certainly perhaps that's the way to go. We need to be looking at this as a region like SADC. That's all we have time for in this edition of Invest Africa. We'll be back again at the same time next week. Until then, I'm Godfrey Mutizwa.